My name is Ken Caldeira. I'm a senior scientist here at Carnegie Institution for Science, but I also work as a senior scientist for Breakthrough Energy, which is a philanthropic organization funded by Bill Gates.
Okay.
In my career, I started out as a climate scientist and a geochemist studying climate change and its impacts. And over the years, I've become more interested in ways to address climate change. And so that's led me to an interest in things like geoengineering and also in energy system transition. And most of my recent work has been focused on trying to understand how we could build an energy system that does not use the sky as a waste dump for our CO2 pollution.
What are the most promising aspects of the work that you've been doing?
Promising, I don't know. My basic nature is to be kind of pessimistic about everything, but also try to be hopeful about that we can do things. But human nature being what it is does lead me to a certain amount of pessimism. One of the things that I try to do is, I feel I have very low predictive skill, and I feel that most people think they have predictive skill far in excess of what they really have. And I think all too many people are going around choosing what they think is the winning technology or the thing that will save us from climate change. And I think that we really don't know how we're going to get ourselves out of this mess, and so that we really need to work on a broad array of possible solutions and try to make them all work. And we're basically in a situation of decision making under uncertainty where we're groping in the dark and learning as we go along. And I think it's really dangerous to prematurely narrow our options. You know, right now, global emissions are somewhat stabilized, but atmospheric CO2 concentrations continue to rise year after year. And the planet gets warmer and warmer year after year with some fluctuations in between, but basically it's been getting warmer and warmer. We've been seeing incredible heat waves in places like India. You know, here in California we've had droughts, and there's all kinds of extreme weather events happening with increasing frequency. You know, so the first order of business is to try to get people to stop making things worse, and that means trying to help people to not dump their waste into the sky. And this is very challenging, obviously, because people typically want to do whatever is cheapest, and most people want to operate in what they perceive to be their narrow self-interest. And usually that just means dumping greenhouse gases into the sky. And so just figuring out how to make it, everybody perceive it to be in their self-interest to reduce emissions, I think is the first order of business. And that's really what my work at Breakthrough Energy is about, is the idea that, well, it's easier to do good if doing good is not costly. And so can we reduce the cost, or ideally even make carbon emission-free energy technologies cheaper than their polluting alternatives. And so, you know, I don't know if we'll succeed in that, but that at least is the goal. You know, I think the idea that human nature is going to change and suddenly we're all going to sing Kumbaya and link arms together and work together for the common goals, that would be great, but maybe not a realistic expectation. So, you know, then we come to the idea that, well, even if we ramp down and bring emissions to zero, we're going to have a pretty toasty world out there, because it's going to take a while to do that. And you know, many people have suggested, and IPCC and other analytic groups have said, oh, there's a big role for carbon dioxide removal and to bring atmospheric concentrations down after it reaches some peak. I would love that to happen, but again, the whole social science aspect of it, you know, if you see right now, we're in a situation with high gasoline prices, with the war in Ukraine and so on, and you know, this is creating a political backlash and helping the rise of right-wing parties in various countries, because you know, that basically politicians lose elections when fuel prices are high. And the question of, well, even though withdrawing CO2 from the atmosphere could be a very valuable thing to do, if you're a politician and you say, well, look, we can either give money, we can either cut your taxes, or we can give money to fund your child's school teacher, or we can give money to reduce emissions, which will help people on the other side of the world centuries into the future, that might be a hard sell. And again, same thing with the energy technologies. If carbon dioxide removal is going to work, it's got to be cheap, because if it's costly, I think there's very few politicians who are going to want to raise people's taxes to suck carbon dioxide out of the sky, even if that's a sensible thing to do.
What are your thoughts on the science of CO2 reduction, methane reduction, and other gases?
Carbon dioxide removal, we know, works because plants do it all the time, and plants have been doing it for billions of years. And so there's no question that, that carbon dioxide can be removed from the atmosphere. In fact, all life on Earth, except for maybe a few chemosynthetic bacteria living on mid-ocean ridges, but basically 99.99% of life on Earth depends on atmospheric carbon dioxide removal, because we all depend on plants. And so, anyway, there's no question that it works from the perspective of technical feasibility. And so for me, or from my perspective, the main issue is, does it work from this context of cost and social and political forces being willing to pay that cost? But I don't think there's any technical problem. With regard to methane removal, methane is a far more dilute gas than is CO2. So CO2 is extremely dilute in the atmosphere, but methane is far more dilute. Also, when you emit some carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, some of that carbon dioxide hangs around in the atmosphere for hundreds of thousands of years. Whereas when you release methane to the atmosphere, it's removed from the atmosphere in a few decades. And so the fact that the methane is very dilute in the atmosphere, moves it from the atmosphere within a few decades, to me makes atmospheric methane removal not overly attractive. On the other hand, methane is a greenhouse gas.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
can I just cut there for a second?